Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our first literature review on this channel. For those of you who do not know who I am Alex Lopez. I am a current English major and Education Sciences major at the University of California, Irvine. And what are these literature reviews? Well, in these literature reviews, I aim to explore certain novels, plays, poems, in order to give the audience a detailed analysis of what the form of literature is about, to interest you guys into reading more literature, because everyone should read a good book here and there and should fall in love with it. So today we're going to be covering one of Shakespeare's greatest tragedies and arguably probably my favorite, Richard III. So how we're going to do this is I'm going to have a link in the description for you to follow around, and specifically we're going to be looking at the opening soliloquy from lines 1 through 37 from Act 1, Scene 1. It sets up the play, and it's a soliloquy by none other than Richard, in which he breaks the fourth wall with the audience. And we will explore why, and because he breaks the fourth wall, what is he trying to get out of it? So, to offer context as well into the play before we begin, this play is written after a civil war between the House of York, that Richard is a part of, and the House of Lancaster in competition for the English throne. The House of York did prevail, and because of it, Richard's brother, King Edward, is now king. So, let's get right into it. I'm going to do my best to match the tone of the soliloquy, and I hope you all find, something new to read out of this. Now is the winter of all discontent, made glorious summer by this son of York, and all the clouds that lowered upon our house in the deep bosom of the ocean buried. Now are our brows bound with victorious wreaths, our bruised arms hung up for monuments, our stern alarms changed to merry meetings, our dreadful marches to delightful measures. Grim visaged war has smoothed his wrinkled front, and now, instead of mounting barbed steeds to fright the souls of fearful adversaries, he capers nimbly in a lady's chamber to the lascivious pleasing of a lute. But I, that am not shaped for sportive tricks, nor made to court an amorous looking glass, I, that am rudely stamped and want love's majesty to strut before a wanton ambling nymph, I, that am curtailed of this fair proportion, cheated of feature by dissembling nature, deformed, unfinished, sent before my time into this breathing world scarce half made up, and at so lamely and unfashionably the dogs bark at me as I halt by them, why I, in this weak piping time of peace, have no delight to pass away the time, unless to see my shadow in the sun, and the scent of mine own deformity. And therefore, since I cannot prove a lover to detain these farewell spoken days, I am determined to prove a villain and hate the idle pleasures of these days. Plots have I laid, inductions dangerous, by drunken prophecies, libels, and dreams, to set my brother Clarence and the king in deadly hate, the one against the other, and if King Edward be as true as just as I am subtle, false, and treacherous. So those are lines 1 through 37 from Act 1, Scene 1. And reading this, it poses a big question of this soliloquy. How does Richard's reasoning behind playing the villain illustrate that his villainy is a role that he felt compelled to play rather than one he was invited to fulfill? In other words, was there a need for there to be a villain? So, how we're going to explore that further and how we're going to explore what breaking the fourth wall means further is we're going to do a deep analysis of the segment I just read to give the viewers a better understanding of how much of a villain Richard is, and furthermore, was he ever needed to be a villain? So, let's begin. Now. Not back then, not in the future, right now is the winter of our discontent, made glorious summer by this son of York. So, Richard is obviously using a metaphor of seasons changing to illustrate that this time of cruelty that is associated with winter has now changed into this glorious summer, or this peace under the rule of the House of York that just beat the House of Lancaster. He mentions that all the clouds that lowered upon their house have now been buried in the deep bosom of the ocean. He comments that their bruised arms are hung up for monuments, their stern alarms have changed to merry meetings, and their dreadful marches have changed to delightful measures. So, what does Richard gain in offering all this context to us? Well, he doesn't gain much, but it is important because it highlights to the audience that times are different, and also poses the question, now that the times are different and there's this peace, is Richard a fan of this peace? Well, in the next segment where he states, grim Vesa's wall has smoothed his wrinkled front, and now, instead of mounting barbed steeds to fright the souls of fearful adversaries, he capers nimbly in a lady's chamber to the lascivious pleasing of a lute. So he kind of mocks himself that he used to be fighting people on his horse, on his steed, knocking them down. And now he just settles to the lascivious pleasing of a lute. He does not enjoy this peace. So what is he going to do about it? What is he going to do about it? Additionally, it becomes more clear to the reader that he does not enjoy this piece, because in the next line he states, but I, that am not shaped for sportive tricks, nor made to court an amorous looking glass, I, that am rudely stamped, and want love's majesty to strut before a wanton ambling nymph, I, not someone else, just him. He only hates this piece, not everyone else. He just, he's eliminating everyone and saying that only he cannot enjoy this piece. But why? Why can't he enjoy it? there is no reason to not be able to find happiness when there is peace. I mean, I like peaceful times. You like peaceful times. Everyone likes peaceful times. So here's the juicy part. Now that he's offered us all this context that illustrates that he is not a fan of this peace, he goes into why, which is going to answer our question. He says that he is cheated a feature by the assembling nature, that he is deformed, unfinished, and sent before his time into this breathing world scars have made up. So he's saying that he is deformed, and for that reason, he cannot enjoy this peace because he is ugly so much that he states the dogs bark at him as he halts by them. So he is kind of this monster that roams the lands and is hated by everyone according to him. So does this hatred justify himself to not enjoy this peace, which adds to answering that question? Was this role of being a villain invited to fulfill, or was he compelled to play? He's kind of inviting himself here. He keeps on saying that he's the only person who can enjoy this peace. So he's kind of inviting himself. Not you, just me. He states that in this weak piping time of peace, he has no delight to pass away the time. Again, he's just signaling himself that this peace does not apply to him. Once again, he is inviting himself into being this villain, and therefore, since he cannot prove a lover, which is often associated when there is peace, that you will be able to find love and, pass away the time with a lover, he cannot get a lover and entertain these farewell spoken days. So instead, he is going to play the villain and hate the idle pleasures of these days. He is planning to ruin them for everyone else, because to him, there is no possibility for him to be accepted into this amorous realm of peace and love. So this commitment to a path that requires the destruction of peace at the expense of his family, his friends, and the possibility of love and acceptance kind of sets, the play for his tragic downfall, because he's choosing to eliminate everyone, as he states that his first plot that he has laid will be to set his brother Clarence and the king on deadly hate against each other. And he means to do this by drunken prophecies, libels, and dreams that he has, and he highlights that he himself is subtle, false, and treacherous, that he is evil. So now that we got all this, let's go back. We clearly know that he is inviting himself to play this role of the villain, because he often says that it is him, that it is I. But there is also a part where you could feel that he is compelled to play it, because he states that he is deformed and nobody really likes him. The audience may feel sympathy for him, and that is the big reason why he breaks this fourth wall. He breaks it because he is trying to gain sympathy from the audience to make alliances for when he does decide to become the villain and ruin everything for him. He's going to need allies to support him, and he does that by trying to get sympathy. Oh, I'm deformed, I'm unfinished, I'm sent before my time, dogs bark at me, please help me. But as a person who's reading this for the first time, are you going to believe that? After we realize that he will set up his brother and the king, family, against each other just to ruin peace, are you really going to fall for his actions, what he's trying to do? So, boom, we answered why he breaks the fourth wall. He's trying to gain sympathy from us to form alliances on his quest to become a villain and ruin everything for everyone. And we also answered, was it compelled or was it invited? He obviously invites himself because he says I, but It could also be compelled to play because he is the form. It might be a role that he felt was compelled to play because he is the form and he is a monster. So in theory, monsters do things that are bad. So there you go. I will wrap this up because it is getting kind of long. And I'm sorry for the audio. I did some audio tests and I have an iPhone XR, so it literally sounds awful. I will improve this later on. But I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope you all may have found something new to read. How will Richard's quest for villainy play out? Will it go in his favor? Will he achieve his goals of being a villain, or will he shy away from them and be taken down?